excited to be here. This is last year I was here about the same time and was able to share a little bit with you. And I got to warn you, I don't stand still, so I can't videotape that.
Why, John?
One of the things I love to do when we go out and we get to share what our ministry is like in Chile is I always sit up here and I talk about it, and what you don't realize is it's all playing in my head in video. I think in images. So as I tell you stories, I'm thinking and seeing and replaying what's going on in my head, even though it's happening instantaneously. So I thought about this one day, and I thought, how could I just take everybody and go to Chile so you could all just sit on the sideline or join in with us and see what's going on? So instead of sitting here and talking about it for a little while, I'm going to show you a little 5-minute video, and I want to warn you before it shows. The very first part of it is from a news broadcast that happened in Chile. We originally went down to Chile as a church plant with a church planting organization who's planted churches in the Santiago area in the south of Chile also, up into Peru and Ecuador. And over our time there, we were very active in the football or soccer ministry that we have inside of our church. And so my buddy who runs that ministry and I started talking about the possibilities of what would happen if we took that football ministry out into the streets. What if we went out to where the kids were, instead of always inviting them to come into the church to play with us there? And he liked the sound of that, and so he and I made a phone call to my college coach, who you'll see in this video, who was in Chile this last year. And I knew that he had done a missions trip to Africa involving soccer, and so I knew that he knew somebody that was doing this already. So we asked him, and he said, sure enough, and this guy came down to visit. Here's the fun part about God's kingdom and how small it gets. Their national headquarters is actually located down here in Twinsburg. So here we are, talking to people that are very familiar. I'm very familiar with where they're from. And they come down to Chile and they start sharing with us about what the possibilities are with the football ministry if we wanted to start one. And so we started one. It was about 2 years ago. We work with a group called Ambassadors Football. If you've done soccer camps here around this area, you might know them as Ambassador in Sport. They just changed their name. They've been doing soccer ministry for over 22 years. And they're located in 22 different countries around the world. I've had the pleasure to visit some of those locations, including South Africa, where I was able to go in and see the prison ministry that they run there, which is actually totally operated with inside the prison. They have just an outstanding statistic that they use. The prisons in South Africa are very violent in a lot of different ways that I just don't even like to talk about it. It is just a horrendous place. And what they've done is they've convinced the leadership inside the prisons in South Africa to allow them to create a soccer team inside the prison and let those prisoners live apart from the rest of the prisoners. And this is a program that's been going on now for almost 15 years. And this is the statistic I want to share with you about prison ministry. And it's something that we're striving to help do in Chile also. In the general population, when a prisoner in South Africa leaves prison, 85% of them return. Through the soccer program, which is called the Hope Academy, 15% of those prisoners return to prison. So there is power in that transformation, and that's something we're seeking to do. So instead of talking about it a little bit more, I'll come back and talk about it at the end. Why don't we go ahead and run the video? I'll warn you, some of the stuff's in Spanish in the beginning, but I think you'll get the general gist of what's going on there.
Con la selección interna.
el permite interactuar con toda la gente del mundo externo y en alguna medida ver que no están tan abandonados en ese aspecto.
Somos todos iguais, né? Vivemos as consequências, né, das nossas escolhas, mas somos todos iguais.
Fue una jornada en la que los asombrados extranjeros vivieron una experiencia inolvidable en un ruedo donde muchos ciudadanos ni siquiera se atreven a entrar, pero los más beneficiados fueron los internos.
No quiero perder las cosas que me quedan por hacer, las cosas que me quedan por vivir en ti. No quiero olvidar las cosas que planeaste para mí, los sueños que me diste lograr por ti. No tienes que buscar a nadie más, yo quiero ir. Aquí está mi tiempo, aquí está mi soledad. Aquí estoy yo, mi vida es para ti, un día quiero yo invertir. Aquí están mis manos, aquí está mi voz. Aquí estoy yo, aquí estoy yo. Listo quiero ser, los hombres que me diste voy a usar, los años que me has dado vivir por ti. Voy a conquistar.
So that'll give you a little taste of what life in Chile is like for us. Pastor told me that you guys have been doing a series on faith, and he said, give me a theme for your talk this morning. And so my theme that I chose was stepping into faith. A lot of times you'll hear the phrase stepping out in faith, and what we found with the football ministry that is a lot of it is just stepping into the world, stepping out into the world and taking the talents that we have. You saw a lot of stuff in the video there, and I'll kind of try to sift through it for you. We had some additional photos, but technical difficulty that we can't get them up there. But with the prison ministry, that was something that happened entirely by accident. About 2 years ago, when we first started the ministry, we had a group in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and my buddy Valmir, who heads up the ambassadors group there, came down to serve with us. And basically what they were coming to do was show us how we could do football ministry, what the possibilities were. And one of those possibilities was a friend called me and said, hey, do you think the guys from Brazil would be interested in going into the prison and playing? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, let's call them and we'll find out. And in this video, this is actually the second time we've been in that prison. That is Chile's largest prison. It's also Chile's most dangerous prison. And as you saw, the guys are just dressed normal. They don't wear uniforms. They live communally, so you saw the big bars behind us with guys holding the spears, and they were all kind of stacked up against the gate there. Their living quarters are just above there, and they all just share one big room. They don't have private cells. Anything they want from the outside, any additional food or clothing has to come from the outside. They're not provided with anything except one meal a day. So they're not the most conducive living conditions that they have there. And we went into that prison. That was the very first time we went into play in South America. And it was a really interesting experience because inside that area where we play, it's a rotunda, it's a round area. And if you picture it as a clock, there's actually those big gates at different locations around the rotunda. And the sound is just deafening. The first time we went in, it was just non-stop. I mean, it almost hurt your ears. It was so loud because they were just yelling and screaming at us. And the reason being is that nobody ever comes in that prison. So this was something new. They were kind of excited about it, and they were letting us know about it. And they also had some few choice words for us. But what was interesting was at the end of that match that morning, they invited the head of the prison system in all of Chile to come. And he was going to speak because one of the things that happened when we arrived there was every news outlet in Chile showed up for this match. And we didn't know that. We thought we were just going to go in and play with the guys. And it was a great privilege and honor to do that. But when we walked into this rotunda, there was every news channel camera there. There were still photographers, there were reporters, and they're all sticking microphones in our faces. And we were just stunned by it. And so what ended up happening was we played the match, they cart out the head of the prison system, and he gets in front of the microphone to address the media and to address the rest of the prison, because they were piping this throughout the prison. You could barely hear a word he was saying, because the prisoners were just screaming and screaming and screaming. And so he's done speaking, and before we had gone out to play that morning, they put us in this little room in the back and said, you know, you can get ready here. And we just said a short prayer. We said, you know, Lord, whatever happens here today, we just really pray that your name would be proclaimed through our actions and what we're doing. And that was it. It was very simple. And we went out and played. And so my buddy Valmir, even though he's from Brazil, he speaks great Spanish. And they looked at me and they said, you know, we'd like you to come and address the media. And I said, no. I said, this is actually my friend Valmir's team. I said, he'll address the media for us. And so Valmir stood up there. And as soon as they handed him the microphone, the entire prison went silent. I mean, pin drop silent. It was so obvious that it kind of jolted you. It was because there was just this loud screaming the whole time, and all of a sudden it was silent. And for 5 minutes, Valmir proclaimed the name of Jesus Christ. And so what we didn't understand what was happening at the time, because keep in mind, he hadn't even started a football ministry yet. These are just friends that came to show us what we could do. But what ended up happening was the media coverage from that game ended up airing on the news for 3 nights in a row in Chile, on every channel. And in Chile, they do news a little bit different. Here, you get a half an hour, and you get maybe like 30 seconds or a minute for a story. Not in Chile. That section you saw, that was from a match we just played at that same prison in May, and the media came again to cover that. I actually had to edit that video footage down. That's how long it is. That video footage of our match in the prison is actually almost 6 minutes long in itself. So you can see it's a great platform. It's one we never planned to have because we stepped into the prison. We didn't choose to sit on the sidelines. And so through that time that we had with them about 2 years ago, that has really blossomed into us starting a full-time ministry. And some of the stuff you saw at the end are some of the other things that we're doing there. We do have a really great prison ministry, and it's something that, for me personally, I would have never dreamed that I would even step foot inside a prison here in the U.S., let alone one in South America. And I love it. I get very excited. I get kind of giddy the day we're going to go to prison because we have a lot of friends there. And it's a great opportunity just to share informally. In the prison systems in Santiago, in particular, the Pentecostal church is very active. And they're doing some really good things, but they're also doing some things that kind of are skewing, in my opinion, a relationship with Christ, because they put so much emphasis on the formalities of the way they worship and things like that. And so here comes this group of street football guys from a small suburb in Santiago, and we're walking in there just wanting to play football with them and then take a few minutes to share. And it's really interesting to see how their lives are changing and how they interact with us and how we pray with them. I think is actually having the biggest impact in terms of what we do. And so I'm not a pastor. I'm not a church planter. I'm a football lover. I've played since I was a young kid, played all the way through college. That's a passion I have. I have a passion for technology, and I have a passion for publishing. And the Lord's using all those tools, as long as we're willing to step up and say, hey, you know what? This was never mine in the first place. This was yours. You gave this to me. You gave me these talents for football. You gave me these talents for publishing. You gave me these talents for marketing. I want to give them back to you, and I'm really excited to see what you can do with them. For a lot of people, that's pretty scary. It was scary for me. It was scary to go from a job where you have a regular paycheck, great health insurance, everything's being provided for, and to say, hey, you know what, this isn't what we believe it's all about. We're going to step into the mission field because we believe you're calling us to do that. So as we started the football ministry, it's been very interesting to see a lot of different things kind of emerge. Like I said, we went down to Chile with a church planting organization, and they have many churches around the Santiago area, so we've kind of come alongside the church, and that's one of the things Ambassadors likes to do. We don't like to do things on our own. We always like to do it in partnership with the local church. So we come alongside some of our local pastors that are trying to use football as ministry, and are helping them to organize a little bit better. We're training them on how to coach. We're training them how to train their little guys. We actually have our own team also at our home church that's a youth team, and you saw some of the highlights of one of their tournaments that was playing at the end of this video. That's a really interesting ministry because on that team, there's really only about three believers in Christ. that I feel confident 100% that they're walking with the Lord. And the rest of the guys on that team are somewhere between there, and they just love hanging out with us. And that's okay, because they've all been invited to be there, because we see something in their lives that we believe that God will transform if we pour our lives into them. So my very best friend down there, Roberto, who was the one I had the conversation with about starting the football ministry and getting out into the community, he's just been a wonderful leader here. And if you've never been to South America or in Latin America, it has a very interesting dynamic to it in that the mothers are really end up being the leaders in the home. So, and a lot of times, young men in particular, they really don't have a father figure. Fathers are routinely absent in their lives. If they're around, they're usually around for very little time. I would say a very small percentage are what we would call an ideal parenting situation where the father is an active member of the family. So here we are with these, the youngest guy on our team is 16, the oldest is 26, so somewhere in that range the rest of them fall. And out of all of them, there's only 2 of them that I know that actually have an active relationship with their fathers. So that's a role that Roberto has stepped into simply to lead the team. That was not his intention, but again, when you step into an opportunity, when you step out into your faith, it's interesting what the Lord will do, because all he's really looking for is for you to take the first step. He wants you to be in motion. He doesn't want you sitting on the sidelines. And if we realize that everything that we have and everything that we are is really his, and we just need to be good stewards of it. Well, being a good steward of it is giving it back to him and saying, what are you going to do with this? There's a verse we share with these young men. We call it our go-to verse. It's the verse we talk about a lot before we play. And it's Colossians 3:23, because they can relate to it whether they're believers or not. And Colossians 3:23 says, do everything as if working for the Lord and not for man, to paraphrase that verse. And so if you think about that and you think about what you're doing in your work life, in your school life, whatever it is that you're doing, if you think about that verse and you say, am I doing all of this for the Lord? I was just talking to my son about this. And it's kind of like, where are we spending our time and how are we spending our time? And that relates to things like the music you listen to, the movies you watch. You're taking time to do that, so you're investing time, and that time belongs to the Lord. So how do we gauge that? And what we find is if we take those tools and we take that commitment and we give them back to the Lord and we pour ourselves into what the opportunities are that he's giving us, he'll do great things. So in the lives of these young men, Roberto has emerged now as a great father figure. And it's really cool to listen to. My Spanish is okay. I can survive, but Roberto is a native Spanish speaker, and some of the stories he's telling me about the things that these young men are confiding in him, these are the things that a young man should be talking to their dad about. And yet here he is, and we're having an effect, and it's been great to see them have their lives transformed by knowing Jesus Christ, and more importantly, seeing Jesus Christ in men around them every day really has a huge impact on these guys. I've talked a little bit about the little guys. Again, that's just a lot of training and getting these kids organized. We have a dream one day to have an academy for some of the younger kids across everywhere else outside of the U.S. When a child is about 5 years old, the scouts start watching them, and they're trying to identify the best players in the world. And normally, if you're a young child and you show that you have talent, in most countries around the world, you'll be plucked out of your home and actually put into a soccer academy where you're basically born and raised in a soccer setting if you have that kind of talent. We have the same idea. We want to mimic that, but we want to mimic it as a path to knowing Christ. And eventually, if you end up playing for Christ, that's awesome. But there's a lot of opportunity for us to speak into the lives of the families that we minister to. We live on the poorer side of Santiago. We're in some areas where there's a lot of public housing, and some of these have 15 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And so there's just a lot of opportunity, and when you have that kind of living conditions, a lot of times people don't like to be at home, so what do? They hang out on the streets. So it's a great opportunity for us to do ministry, particularly for me being white and knowing how to play soccer. Even though I'm 50, I can still hang with the guys. When I have a ball and I'm out on the street, I draw a crowd, and so it's awesome. The guys just come alongside, and sometimes it's just rolling out the ball and playing with them. And then obviously when we're done and it's time to leave or we need to head to the next place, they always ask one question. You know what it is? What are you doing here? where did you come from? And what did they do? They just gave me the opportunity to share the gospel with them. So as a missionary, there's advantages to being a white person in South America. They call me the gringo, and it's not derogatory. In other parts of Latin America, that's very derogatory. In Chile, it's a term of endearment. So that's one other thing that we're doing. We're really excited about a new opportunity that we have with ambassadors. A very good friend of mine heads up our pro player ministry, where he gets professional players from around the world. They pick a location every December, and they go to minister with the pro players in different countries. They'll be coming to Chile, primarily Major League Soccer players from around the U.S. that he ministers to will be joining us in Chile in December. We're bringing a very small team to do some really concentrated one-on-one type of ministry with them. So that's kind of the world of our soccer ministry in South America. It's a privilege and an honor to do it, to be able to take the talents that the Lord has given us and give them back to Him. This is totally by His design. We did not go to South America to plan on doing this. But it is amazing that when we do step into the world with faith, what the Lord will do with it. So thank you for having me this morning. I appreciate it.